I stood at the entrance of what used to be my property, and my mouth fell open so wide I could have caught flies. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might jump out of my chest. Where my beautiful empty land used to be, the land I had saved for years to buy, there were now 3 giant. One was bigger than any house I had ever seen. They had fancy stone walls, huge windows that sparkled in the sunlight, and driveways made of shiny grey stones. There were perfectly cut green lawns, fancy lights along the paths, and even a fountain. A fountain I had only been gone for 1 year. Just 1 year my legs felt weak. I grabbed onto the wooden fence post to stop myself from falling down. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. Any second now, I would wake up in my bed and laugh about this crazy dream. But I didn't wake up, because this wasn't a dream, this was real. Someone had built 3 massive mansions on MY land, and I had a pretty good idea who was behind it. Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, the woman who had made my life miserable for 2 whole years before I left. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and started taking pictures. Click, click, click. The camera couldn't capture how angry and confused I felt, but it could capture the proof. The proof that someone had stolen my property. As I stood there still in shock, a fancy black car pulled up. The window rolled down and there she was, Karen Whitmore, with her perfect blonde hair, her bright red lipstick, and that mean smile that made my stomach turn. "Well, well, well," she said, looking at me like I was a bug on her shoe. "Look who decided to come back." But let me back up. Let me tell you how I ended up in this crazy situation. My name is Jake Morrison, and I'm 32 years old. I'm not rich, I'm not fancy. I work as a computer programmer and I live a simple life. Or at least I used to. 2 years ago I bought a piece of land on the edge of Sunset Valley. It wasn't much, just 2 acres of empty land with some trees and wild grass. But it was mine. I had saved every penny for 5 years to buy it. I had big dreams for that land. I wanted to build a small house there one day, maybe have a garden, and live peacefully away from the noise of the city. The land was just outside a neighborhood called Sunset Hills Estates. It was a fancy neighborhood with big houses and people who drove expensive cars. The neighborhood had an HOA, that's a homeowners association. Basically, a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood. Now my land wasn't in the neighborhood. It was right next to it, but completely separate. I didn't have to follow their rules. I didn't have to pay their fees. My land was my own business, but Karen Whitmore didn't see it that way. Karen was the president of the Sunset Hills HOA. She was in her 50s, always dressed like she was going to a fancy party, and she acted like she owned the whole world. She drove a white Mercedes, always wore pearls, and looked down at everyone who wasn't as perfect as her. From the moment I bought my land, Karen hated it. She would drive by and stare at my property with this angry look on her face. One day she actually stopped her car, got out, and marched right up to me while I was walking around my land, planning where I might build someday. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp like a knife. "This land is an eyesore. It makes our beautiful neighborhood look bad. You need to do something about it." I was confused. "What do you mean, it's just land?" "I'm going to build on it eventually." "Eventually isn't good enough," she snapped. "Our property values are dropping because of this ugly empty lot next to us. You need to either build something now or sell it to the HOA." I tried to stay calm. "Ma'am, this is my property. I'll do what I want with it when I'm ready." Her face turned red. "You'll regret this attitude, young man, mark my words." She stomped back to her car and drove away, leaving me standing there, completely shocked. That was just the beginning. The harassment begins over the next few months. Karen made my life a nightmare. She started sending me letters, official-looking letters on HOA paper, telling me I was violating community standards. But remember, my land wasn't even in her community. She had no power over me. I ignored the letters. Then she started calling the city, making up complaints. She said my land was attracting rats. It wasn't. She said I was illegally dumping trash. I wasn't. She said my property was a safety hazard. It definitely wasn't. City inspectors would show up at my land, look around, find nothing wrong, and leave. But Karen kept calling them, over and over again. One time she actually put up a sign on the road near my land that said, "Ugly property ahead, blame the lazy owner." I took it down, but she put up another one, and another one. I talked to a lawyer, and he told me that what she was doing was harassment, but it would be expensive to sue her just to make her stop. He said the best thing to do was ignore her and document everything, so that's what I did. I took pictures of every sign she put up. I saved every letter she sent. I made notes every time she did something mean, but it was exhausting. Every day I had to deal with Karen's nonsense. It was wearing me down. Then about a year and a half after I bought the land, something amazing happened. My company offered me a job in Singapore. It was a 1-year contract, and they would pay me 3 times my normal salary. 3 times, I couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. With that money, I could finally build my dream house when I came back. There was just one problem. What would I do about my land? I thought about it for days. Finally, I decided I would just leave it empty. I would pay the property taxes from Singapore, and when I came back in 1 year, I would start building. I called my lawyer and asked him if I needed to do anything to protect my property while I was gone. Is there a fence? He asked. Yes, a simple wooden fence marking the boundaries, I said. And you have the deed, right? The official paper that proves you own it? Yes, it's in my safe. Then you should be fine, he said. Just make sure your property taxes are paid and take pictures of everything before you leave. If anyone tries to mess with your land while you're gone, you'll have proof of what it looked like. So that's exactly what I did. I spent a whole day taking pictures and videos of every inch of my property. I took photos of the fence, the trees, the empty grass, everything. I also put up no trespassing signs all around the fence. Big clear signs that said private property, no entry. Before I left for Singapore, I drove by the HOA office and dropped off a letter. The letter said, I am leaving the country for 1 year for work. My property at 1847 Oakwood Road will remain vacant during this time. This land is private property and is not part of Sunset Hills Estates. Any trespassing or unauthorized activity on this property will result in legal action. I made sure to send it certified mail too, so I would have proof that they received it. Karen signed for the letter herself. I saw the signature on the receipt. I thought I had covered everything. I thought my land would be safe. I was so wrong. My year in Singapore was incredible. I worked hard, made great friends, and saved a lot of money. Every month, I would check my bank account and see my property taxes being automatically paid from my account. Everything seemed fine. I barely thought about Karen and her HOA drama. I was too busy living my life on the other side of the world. I did try to check on my property a few times using Google Maps satellite view, but the images were old and didn't show anything new. I even called my neighbor, Mr. Peterson, who lived near my land, but not in the HOA neighborhood, and asked him to drive by and make sure everything was okay. Looks the same to me, Jake, he said on the phone. Just empty land with some trees, nothing's changed. That was 8 months into my trip. I was relieved. 4 more months and I would be home. Then I could finally start building my dream house. When my plane landed back in the United States, I felt so happy. I had missed home. I had missed American food, my own bed, and just the feeling of being back where I belonged. I took a taxi from the airport straight to my apartment. I was so tired from the long flight that I just crashed on my bed and slept for 12 hours straight. The next morning, I woke up excited. Today was the day I would visit my land and start making plans for building my house. I got in my car and drove towards Sunset Valley. My heart was beating with excitement. I was finally going to start my dream. As I got closer, I started noticing that things looked different. There were new street signs. The road near my property had been repaved and looked fancier. There were new street lights. Wow, they really fixed up this area, I thought to myself. But then I turned onto Oakwood Road, the street where my land was, and my stomach dropped. There were 3 driveways where there used to be open land. 3 driveways made of fancy stone pavers. I drove slower, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. Each driveway led to a massive mansion. These weren't normal houses. These were the kind of houses rich people live in, the kind of houses you see in magazines. I pulled over to the side of the road and got out of my car on shaky legs. I walked closer to where my fence should be, but the fence was gone. Instead, there was a fancy iron gate with a security code panel. My breath caught in my throat. This was my land. This was supposed to be my empty land. I walked along the property line, my mind spinning. How did this happen? Who built these houses? When did this happen? And then I saw it. A small metal sign attached to one of the iron gates. Sunset HILLS Estates Luxury HOMES Property of Sunset HILLS HOA. My vision went blurry for a second. I felt dizzy. The HOA, Karen's HOA, they had built on my land. They had stolen my property and built 3 giant mansions on it. That's when I heard the car pull up behind me, the fancy black Mercedes, and Karen's voice dripping with fake sweetness. Well, look who decided to come back. I turned around slowly. Karen was leaning out of her car window, that terrible smile on her face. She looked so proud of herself, so smug. What? I could barely speak. What did you do? She laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Jake, poor silly Jake, you abandoned your property. It became a blight on our beautiful community. So the HOA board voted to claim it for unpaid fees and develop it properly. These gorgeous homes are now part of Sunset Hills Estates. Unpaid fees, I shouted. I don't owe your HOA anything. This land was never part of your neighborhood. Karen's smile got wider. Well, that's not what the county records say now. You should have been here to defend your property. Finders keepers, Jake. She rolled up her window and drove away, leaving me standing there in complete shock. My mind was racing. County records? What was she talking about? How could they change county records? I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The mansions, the gates, the HOA sign, everything. Then I got back in my car and drove straight to the county clerk's office. I had to see the records. I had to understand what Karen had done. Because one thing was clear. Karen Whitmore and her HOA had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had no idea who they were messing with. And I was going to make sure they paid for every single brick they put on my land. My hands were still shaking as I drove to the county clerk's office. I kept thinking about those 3 massive mansions sitting on MY land. How was this even possible? The county clerk's office was in an old brick building downtown. I parked my car and practically ran inside. There was a woman at the front desk with gray hair and glasses. Her name tag said Martha. I need to see the property records for 1847 Oakwood Road, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Martha typed on her computer. Okay, let me pull that up for you. I waited. Every second felt like an hour. Here we are, she said. 1847 Oakwood Road. Would you like a printed copy? Yes, please. And can you also show me the ownership history? She printed out several papers and handed them to me. I looked down at the first page and my blood ran cold. The current owner listed was Sunset HILLS Estates HOMEOWNEOS Association. No, I whispered. No, this is wrong. Martha looked concerned. Is everything okay, sir? This is MY property. I own this land. I have the deed in my safe at home. I flipped through the papers with trembling fingers. Then I found something that made my heart stop. There was a document dated 8 months ago. It said tax lien foreclosure property seized for non-payment of special assessment fees owed to Sunset Hills Estates HOA. Special assessment fees, I said out loud. What special assessment fees? My land was never part of their HOA. Martha looked uncomfortable. Sir, I just keep the records. If you believe there's been an error, you'll need to speak with a lawyer. I took the papers and walked out in a daze. My mind was spinning. I sat in my car and read every single page carefully. According to the documents, the HOA had filed something called a special assessment lien against my property 2 years ago, right around the time I first started having problems with Karen. The assessment was for $50,000, claiming my property was causing decreased property values and environmental concerns for the neighborhood. Then, while I was in Singapore, they filed a foreclosure notice saying I hadn't paid the assessment. 3 months later, they held a foreclosure auction, and guess who bought the property at the auction? The Sunset Hills Estates HOA. For just $60,000, they bought my $200,000 piece of land for $60,000. I felt sick to my stomach. But here's the thing, I was never notified about any of this. Not the lien, not the foreclosure, not the auction, nothing, because all the notices were sent to an address I had never lived at, an address that didn't even exist. This wasn't a mistake. This was fraud. Karen had committed fraud to steal my land. Finding a lawyer, I knew I needed help, real help. So I started calling lawyers. The first 3 lawyers I called said the same thing. This sounds complicated. We don't handle cases like this. The 4th lawyer, a man named Tom Bradley, said, come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Bring every document you have. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those mansions on my land. I kept thinking about Karen's smug smile, but I also felt something else. Determination. Karen thought she had won. She thought I would just give up and go away. She was wrong. Meeting Mr. Bradley. Tom Bradley's office was small but neat. He was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a serious face. He listened to my entire story without interrupting once. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled. This is one of the dirtiest cases of property theft I've seen in 30 years, he said. Can we fight it? I asked. Can we fight it? Son, we're going to destroy them. He smiled for the first time. But I need to be honest with you. This is going to be expensive and it's going to take time. I have money saved from Singapore, I said, and I have all the time in the world. I want my land back. Mr. Bradley nodded. Good, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to file an emergency motion to stop any further construction on the property. Second, we're going to sue for fraud, quiet title action, and damages. Third, we're going to file a criminal complaint with the district attorney because what they did is not just wrong, it's illegal. Over the next 2 weeks, Mr. Bradley worked like a machine. He filed motion after motion. He gathered evidence. He interviewed witnesses, and then we discovered something that made the case even bigger, the shocking discovery. Mr. Bradley called me to his office one afternoon. He looked excited. "Jake, sit down. You're not going to believe what I found." He spread out documents on his desk. "I did some digging into the Sunset Hills HOA finances. Guess how much those 3 mansions cost to build? I don't know. $1 million each. Try $1.5 million each. That's $4.5 million total," I gasped. "Where did they get that kind of money?" Mr. Bradley grinned. "That's the beautiful part. They didn't have it. They took out a huge loan from Valley Bank using the land as collateral, your land. So they used my stolen property to get a loan." "Exactly. And here's where it gets even better. They sold 2 of the mansions already, for $2 million each. That's $4 million. My jaw dropped. They made $4 million selling houses on my stolen land. Yes, and the 3rd mansion, Karen Whitmore moved into it herself. I felt anger rise up in my chest like fire. She's living on my land, in a $1.5 million mansion she built with fraud money. But here's the thing, Jake. Because they used fraud to take the land, everything they did afterward is tainted. The loan, the sales, all of it. What does that mean?" Mr. Bradley's smile got bigger. "It means when we win, and we will win, the court can reverse the sales, make the HOA pay back the buyers, and give you the land back. Plus they'll owe you damages for the fraud. We're talking millions of dollars, Jake." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Millions? Think about it. They stole your land. They made millions from it. They have to give it all back, plus pay you for your suffering and legal fees. This is what we call punitive damages. The court will want to punish them for what they did. The first time since I came back, I felt hope. The court battle begins. Mr. Bradley filed our lawsuit on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Karen's lawyer called. "They want to settle," Mr. Bradley told me on the phone. "Settle for how much?" "They're offering you $300,000 to go away and drop the lawsuit." $300,000. My land alone is worth $200,000, and they made millions from it. Exactly. I told them to take their offer and shove it. We're going to court. The next few weeks were crazy. The local newspaper picked up the story. The headline read, "HOA accused of stealing land, building mansions on fraudulent claim." People in town were shocked. The HOA members who weren't part of Karen's scheme started asking questions. Some of them even called me to apologize. "We had no idea what Karen was doing," one woman told me. "We thought the land had been legally acquired." But Karen and her 3 friends on the HOA board, the ones who had voted to take my land, they stayed silent. Well, mostly silent. One day I got a letter from Karen's lawyer. It said, "My client denies all allegations of fraud. The foreclosure was conducted legally and properly. Mr. Morrison abandoned his property and has no one to blame but himself." I showed the letter to Mr. Bradley. "Good," he said. "Let them deny it. We have all the evidence we need." They sent foreclosure notices to a fake address. They never tried to contact you in Singapore, even though your letter to them had your email and Singapore phone number. They rushed through the foreclosure in record time. Any judge will see this was deliberate fraud. The day of our first court hearing arrived. I put on my best suit and met Mr. Bradley at the courthouse. The courtroom was small but intimidating. Karen was there with her lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named Richard Stone. Karen looked different than I remembered. She looked worried, scared, even good. The judge, a woman named Judge Patricia Chen, looked over our motion. "Mr. Bradley," she said, "you're asking for an immediate halt to all activity on the property and a freeze on the HOA's assets?" "Yes, Your Honor, my client's land was stolen through fraud. While the case proceeds, we're asking that no further changes be made to the property and that the HOA not be allowed to hide assets." Richard Stone stood up. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The foreclosure was completely legal. Mr. Morrison abandoned his property. He was working abroad," Mr. Bradley interrupted. "And he sent the HOA a certified letter telling them exactly that, with his contact information." "Gentlemen," Judge Chen banged her gavel, one at a time. She looked at our evidence for what felt like forever. Then she looked at Karen's lawyer. "Mr. Stone, I'm looking at the foreclosure notices. They were all sent to 1849 Oakwood Road. But Mr. Morrison's actual mailing address was apartment 4B on Riverside Drive, correct?" "Well, yes." And you had that information, because he sent you a certified letter with his correct address before leaving the country." Richard Stone's face turned red. "Your Honor, I'm granting the preliminary injunction," Judge Chen said firmly. "No further construction, sales, or transfers of the property until this case is resolved. Furthermore, I'm freezing the HOA's bank accounts pending investigation. This appears to be a serious case of fraud, and I won't have evidence destroyed while we sort this out." I wanted to jump up and cheer, but Mr. Bradley put his hand on my arm to keep me calm. Karen's face went pale. She leaned over and whispered something angry to her lawyer. "Court is adjourned," Judge Chen said. "Full trial is set for 6 weeks from today." As we walked out of the courtroom, I felt incredible. We had won the first battle, but then something happened that I didn't expect. The threatening phone call that night, I was at home making dinner when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Morrison, the voice was deep and scary. Yes, who is this? You need to drop your lawsuit, walk away now or you'll regret it. My heart started pounding. Who is this? This is your only warning. Drop the lawsuit. Click, the line went dead. I stood there holding my phone, feeling scared and angry at the same time. I immediately called Mr. Bradley and told him what happened. That's witness intimidation, he said. Call the police and file a report. Right now. I called the police. They came to my apartment, took my statement, and said they would investigate, but that wasn't the end of it. 2 days later, I found my car had been keyed. Someone had scratched "Drop IT" into the paint. Then someone broke into my apartment while I was at work. They didn't steal anything. They just left a note on my kitchen table. Last warning. I was scared, really scared, but I was also more determined than ever. Trying to scare you because they're desperate, Mr. Bradley said. They know they're going to lose, so they're resorting to threats. We're going to report all of this to Judge Chen. This kind of behavior will only make things worse for them. Mr. Bradley hired a private investigator named Sarah Martinez. She was amazing. Within a week, Sarah discovered that Karen had done this before. There was another property owner 5 years ago, Sarah told us in Mr. Bradley's office. A man named Robert Chen. He owned land near the HOA neighborhood. Karen tried the same trick with him, filed a fake lien, started foreclosure proceedings. What happened? I asked. He fought it for a while, but then he suddenly dropped the case and moved away. I tracked him down. He now lives in Oregon. I called him, and he said Karen threatened his family. He got scared and took a small settlement to make it all go away. He's willing to testify about what she did to him. This was huge. This proved Karen had a pattern of doing this. There's more, Sarah said. I looked into the HOA board members who voted to take your land. All 4 of them, Karen, Dennis Walsh, Patricia Moore, and Tom Chen, they all bought shares in a company called Sunset Valley Development LLC right before the foreclosure. What does that mean? I asked. Mr. Bradley's eyes lit up. It means they personally profited from stealing your land. They created a development company, stole your property, built mansions, and split the profits. This isn't just HOA business. This is a criminal enterprise. Police get involved with all this new evidence. The police started taking the case seriously. Detective James Rodriguez was assigned to investigate. He was a no-nonsense cop who had been on the force for 20 years. He came to Mr. Bradley's office to interview me. Mr. Morrison, he said, based on the evidence, we're opening a criminal investigation into Karen Whitmore and the other HOA board members for fraud, grand theft, and witness intimidation. This helped my civil case. I asked. It helps a lot, Mr. Bradley said. When there's a criminal investigation happening at the same time as a civil lawsuit, it puts enormous pressure on the defendants. The next day, the news broke. The local TV station ran a story, HOA president under criminal investigation for land theft scheme. Story went viral online. People from all over the country were commenting, sharing it, calling Karen terrible names. The 2 people who had bought the mansions, a doctor and a lawyer, immediately filed their own lawsuits against the HOA, demanding their money back. Everything was falling apart for Karen. One evening, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "I can help you." Email read, Mr. Morrison, my name is Helen Park. I used to be the HOA treasurer before Karen forced me out. I have documents that prove Karen knew exactly what she was doing. She bragged about it in private board meetings. I recorded one of the meetings on my phone. I want to help you, call me. I immediately called Mr. Bradley. He called Helen, verified her identity, and arranged a meeting. Helen Park was a woman in her 40s, well-dressed and professional. She came to Mr. Bradley's office with a box full of documents. Karen is a monster, Helen said. I joined the HOA board because I wanted to help the community, but Karen only cares about money and power. When I questioned her about taking your land, she kicked me off the board. She pulled out her phone. This recording is from a private board meeting 8 months before they foreclosed on your property. She pressed play. Karen's voice came through clear as day. That idiot Jake Morrison is in Singapore. He'll never know what hit him. We file the lien now, wait a few months, then foreclose. By the time he gets back, we'll own the land and have houses built. What's he going to do? Sue us? Let him try. By then, the land will be worth millions and we'll all be rich. Dennis Walsh's voice. What if he actually does sue? Karen laughing. With what money? Legal cases like this cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's just a computer nerd. He'll give up. Recording ended. I sat there stunned. We had her. We had actual proof of the conspiracy. Mr. Bradley was grinning from ear to ear. Helen, you just won this case for us. Settlement offer 2 days later. Richard Stone called Mr. Bradley. They want to settle, Mr. Bradley told me. This time the offer is serious. Much. They're offering to return the land to you, pay you $2 million in damages, and Karen Whitmore will resign from the HOA. $2 million, plus my land back. It was more money than I had ever dreamed of having. What do you think I should do? I asked Mr. Bradley. He leaned back in his chair. Normally, I would say take it. It's a good offer. You get your land, you get rich, and you don't have to go through a long trial. I don't think you're normal, Jake. I think you want justice, not just money. And honestly, I think we can get more, a lot more. If we go to trial with the evidence we have now, the recording, the witness from 5 years ago, the criminal investigation, I think a jury would award you $5 million, maybe more. I thought about it for a long time. I want to go to trial, I finally said. Karen needs to answer for what she did. Not just to me, but to Robert Chen 5 years ago, and to anyone else she might hurt in the future. Mr. Bradley nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll tell them the offer is rejected. As the trial date got closer, more and more people started coming forward with information. A construction worker named Miguel Rodriguez came to our office. I worked on those mansions, he said. The HOA paid my company to build them, but something always felt wrong about it. Karen kept telling us to hurry, 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 build as fast as possible. She said she wanted them done before some deadline. Now I know why. She wanted them finished before you got back from Singapore. Would you be willing to testify? Mr. Bradley asked. Absolutely. What she did was wrong. We also got testimony from the Valley Bank loan officer who had approved the loan for the construction. Karen told me the land had been in HOA ownership for years, he said. She showed me documents that looked official. If I had known the land was stolen, we never would have approved the loan. Everything was coming together. The day before the trial was supposed to start, I was at home packing my documents when there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Karen Whitmore. She was standing there alone, looking terrible. Her hair wasn't perfect anymore. Her makeup was smeared. She looked like she had been crying. I opened the door but kept the chain lock on. What do you want? I said coldly. Jake, please, she said, her voice shaking. Please, I'm begging you, drop the lawsuit. I'll give you anything you want. Please, you're actually begging me, after what you did. I made a mistake, she cried. I'm sorry. My hands were still shaking as I pulled into the parking lot of the county clerk's office. I almost hit another car because I couldn't focus. My brain kept showing me images of those 3 mansions sitting on MY land. I ran inside the building. There was a lady at the front desk with gray hair and glasses. She looked up at me with kind eyes. Can I help you, young man? She asked. I need to see the property records for 1847 Oakwood Road, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Please, it's an emergency. She could probably see how upset I was because she nodded quickly and typed on her computer. Me pull that up for you, just one moment. Those few seconds felt like hours. My heart was pounding in my ears. Okay, here we are, 1847 Oakwood Road. She squinted at the screen, then her eyebrows went up. Oh my, there have been several transactions on this property in the past year, I practically shouted. An old man waiting in line looked at me funny, but I didn't care. I'm sorry, sir, but according to our records, this property was transferred to the Sunset Hills HOA 8 months ago due to, she scrolled down, unpaid HOA fees and liens. Then it was subdivided into 3 parcels and developed. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. That's impossible, I said. I was never part of that HOA. I don't owe them any fees. Can I see the documents, please? The lady looked concerned now. Of course, let me print them out for you. She clicked some buttons and I heard the printer start whirring. A few minutes later, she handed me a stack of papers. I started reading and my blood ran cold. The first document was titled Notice of HOA Lien. It claimed that I owed the Sunset Hills HOA $47,000 in community improvement fees and that my property had been involuntarily annexed into their HOA boundaries. Involuntarily annexed, I whispered. They can't do that. The second document was even worse. It was a notice of foreclosure sale saying that because I didn't pay the fake fees, my property would be sold at auction to pay the debt. The third document was a deed transfer showing that the HOA had bought my property at their own auction for $50,000. $50,000. My land was worth at least $300,000, but here's the thing that made my hands shake with anger. All of these documents had MY signature on them, except I had never signed any of them. I had never even seen them before. Someone had forged my signature, and I was pretty sure I knew who. Ma'am, I said to the clerk, these signatures are fake. I never signed these documents. I was out of the country. I have proof. Her eyes went wide. Oh dear, that's fraud. That's a serious crime. You need to file a police report immediately. I get copies of all of these documents? I asked. Absolutely, and sir, you should also know that there's a contact person listed for these transactions. Let me see. She looked at her screen. Karen Whitmore. She filed all of these documents. Of course she did. I took the copies, thanked the clerk, and walked back to my car in a daze. Karen hadn't just taken my land. She had committed fraud to do it. She had forged documents, created fake fees, and stolen my property while I was thousands of miles away. This wasn't just mean. This was criminal. I sat in my car and immediately called my lawyer, Mr. Chen. He answered on the second ring. Jake. Welcome back from Singapore. How was it? Mr. Chen, someone stole my land, I said, my voice cracking. The HOA built 3 mansions on it while I was gone. They forged my signature and took everything. There was silence on the other end. Then what? I told him everything. The mansions, the county records, the forged signatures, Karen's smug smile. When I finished, Mr. Chen let out a long whistle. Jake, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of fraud I've ever heard. They left a paper trail a mile long, but I have to warn you, this is going to be a big legal battle. HOAs have lawyers. Good lawyers, and they'll fight dirty. Don't care, I said. I want my land back, and I want them to pay for what they did. Okay, Mr. Chen said. Here's what we're going to do. First, we file a police report for fraud and forgery. Then we file an emergency injunction to stop any further development or sale of the properties. Then we sue them for everything: fraud, theft, emotional distress, all of it. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said. But first I drove to the police station. The officer at the desk looked bored until I showed him the documents. Someone forged your signature and stole your land. He sat up straighter. That's a felony. Multiple felonies, actually. I filed a full police report. I gave them copies of everything, the forged documents, my passport showing I was out of the country when the signatures were supposedly made, photos of my land from before I left, and photos of the mansions now. We'll open an investigation, the officer said. This Karen Whitmore person is in serious trouble. Fraud, forgery, theft. She could go to prison for years. Hearing that made me feel a tiny bit better, but I still didn't have my land back. Mr. Chen's office was in a tall building downtown. When I got there, he already had papers spread all over his desk. Sit down, Jake, he said. We have a lot of work to do. For the next 3 hours, we went through everything. Mr. Chen made phone calls. He sent emails. He wrote up legal documents so fast his fingers were a blur on the keyboard. Here's the situation, he finally said. The good news is that you have an absolutely rock-solid case. The forgery alone is enough to void every single one of those transactions. The bad news is that there are now 3 mansions on your land, and there are people living in them. People are living in them? I couldn't believe it. Who? HOA sold the houses to 3 different buyers. Each house sold for about $1.2 million. My jaw dropped. $1.2 million each. That's $3.6 million total, Mr. Chen said. And here's where it gets interesting. Those buyers are innocent. They bought the houses in good faith, not knowing the land was stolen, so we can't just kick them out. But we can make the HOA buy back the houses and tear them down. Or if you want, the HOA can pay you the full value of what they built on your land. My brain was spinning. How much would that be? Mr. Chen pulled out a calculator. The 3 houses are worth about $3.6 million total, but that's not all. We can sue for punitive damages because this was intentional fraud. We can sue for emotional distress. We can sue for legal fees. We can sue for the rental value of the land they stole for 8 months. He looked up at me. Jake, when we're done, the HOA could owe you somewhere between $5 and $10 million. I almost fell out of my chair. $5 to $10 million. But Mr. Chen continued. They're going to fight. They're going to try every dirty trick in the book. Are you ready for that? I thought about Karen's smug smile. I thought about all the harassment. I thought about coming home to find mansions on my land. I'm ready, I said. 2 days later, we were in court for the emergency injunction hearing. Karen was there with 3 expensive-looking lawyers in fancy suits. She looked so confident, sitting there with her arms crossed and that same terrible smile. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. Mr. Chen presented our evidence. He showed the forged signatures. He showed my passport proving I was in Singapore. He showed the timeline of when the documents were filed. One of Karen's lawyers stood up. He was a tall man with slick-back hair and a voice like oil. Your Honor, my client acted in good faith. The property was properly annexed into the HOA through legal procedures. Legal procedures? The judge interrupted. These signatures are clearly forged. The defendant was out of the country. How do you explain that? The lawyer's face turned red. We were unaware that Mr. Morrison was abroad. We sent notices to his last known address, which was his apartment, not the property address. Mr. Chen jumped in. And even if he had received the notices, the HOA had no legal authority to annex his land in the first place. The property was never part of Sunset Hills Estates. The judge looked at the documents for a long time. Then she looked at Karen, who was starting to look less confident. Mrs. Whitmore, the judge said, did you personally file these documents with the county? Karen's lawyer whispered something to her, but the judge said, I asked you, Mrs. Whitmore, not your lawyer. Karen cleared her throat. Yes, Your Honor, I filed them as president of the HOA. And did you verify that these signatures were authentic? I assumed they were. You assumed? The judge's voice was ice cold. You assumed signatures were real on documents that would result in the seizure of someone's property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Karen didn't answer. The judge shook her head. I'm granting the emergency injunction. All construction, development, and sales on the disputed property are hereby frozen. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full forensic investigation of these documents. She looked directly at Karen. Ma'am, you should get a criminal lawyer. You're going to need one. Mr. Chen and I walked out of the courtroom, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. That was just round one, Mr. Chen said, but it was a good round. I thought Karen would back down after that. I thought she would realize she was caught and try to settle. I was wrong. Instead, she got mean. Really mean. The next day, I got a letter from her lawyers. It said that I was trespassing on HOA property and that if I came near their land again, they would have me arrested. Can you believe that? My land, and they were threatening to arrest me. Then Karen started a whisper campaign in the neighborhood. She told everyone that I was a con artist trying to steal property from innocent homeowners. She said I had abandoned the land and now wanted to profit from the HOA's hard work. Some people believed her. I started getting nasty messages on social media from people in Sunset Hills estates calling me greedy and selfish. But here's what Karen didn't know. I had started gathering more evidence. I went back to Mr. Peterson, my neighbor who had checked on my land while I was gone. I asked him if he remembered seeing any construction. Oh yeah, he said. It started about 9 months ago. Big trucks, construction crews, the whole thing. I thought you had sold the land. I tried calling you, but your number didn't work. International, I guess. You see Karen there? I asked. All the time. She was out there almost every day, bossing the construction workers around. She seemed real excited about it. I asked Mr. Peterson if he would testify in court about what he saw. He said yes immediately. Then I did something clever. I went to the construction companies that had built the mansions. I pretended I was interested in hiring them for another project. Those houses on Oakwood Road are beautiful, I said to one of the foremen. How did that project go? The guy was happy to talk. Oh man, that was a weird one. The HOA lady, Karen something, she was really pushy. Kept rushing us, saying we had to finish before some guy came back from overseas. We thought it was weird, but hey, she was paying cash, so we didn't ask questions. She said someone was coming back, I asked casually. Yes, she kept saying we need this done before Jake gets back or something like that. She seemed worried about it. Bingo, that proved Karen knew I owned the land. She knew I was coming back. She had done this on purpose, hoping to finish before I returned. I recorded the conversation, with permission, and gave it to Mr. Chen. This is perfect, he said. This proves intent. This proves she knew exactly what she was doing. Then something happened that I didn't expect. The 3 people who had bought the mansions found out what was going on, and they were furious. One of them, a nice lady named Mrs. Patterson, called me. Her voice was shaking. Mr. Morrison, I just found out that the house I bought might be on stolen land. I paid $1.3 million for this house. I have 2 kids. What's going to happen to us? I felt bad for her. She really was innocent in all this. Patterson, I'm not going to sue you, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. This is between me and the HOA, but I'd recommend you get a lawyer and sue the HOA yourself for selling you a house on fraudulent land. I'm already doing that, she said. And so are the other 2 homeowners. We're all suing the HOA. Karen Whitmore lied to us. She told us this was legitimate HOA land. She never said anything about it being disputed property. This was getting better and better. Now Karen wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting the 3 homeowners and me, and she was losing.